Good morning, everyone. So today we are going to get into day one of our computer science principles lessons. So let's jump into it. This is going to be posted on 4/22. So just keep that in mind as we move through. So today we are going to talk about object-oriented programming, otherwise known as OOP. So object-oriented programming is an approach to problem solving where all computations are carried out using objects. So an object is basically your basic unit of object-oriented programming. It's a component of a program that knows how to perform certain actions and how to interact with other elements in your program. So an example of an object like this would be a dog. So you would expect a dog to have a name. You would expect a dog to be able to do something such as eat, walk, sit. These are examples of something called properties for the name and methods for what they do. Objects can interact with each other using these properties and methods, such as two dogs playing together or a human and a dog walking together. Each of those individual objects knows what their function is. So a human knows how to walk and a dog knows how to walk. Both of them together can interact. So we're going to break these kind of things down into more individual parts. So to start us off, a class. So a class is a blueprint of an object. So before I can know that my dog's name is Lucky and he is a dog and he is a poodle, I first have to know what a dog is. So think of a class like an abstract idea of a dog. The object is the actual dog. So you have to have the class created for dog before you can create an object or a specific dog. Rather than immediately making each individual dog, because yes, we could go through and define each dog individually, but that doesn't help us out when we have to create a large amount of dogs. You first create the class. The class basically describes what a dog looks like and what it can do. So our class might define that our dogs have 4 legs, they have a tail, and that they can walk and bark. Then to actually make the dog, so what you see on the screen now is the class. It is a basic version of a dog, no information filled in, it's just the basic information. So then when we fill in those other pieces of information, when we fill in the extra bits, that's when it becomes a dog. So because we've already created this other idea, the idea of what a dog is at its core, we can create different dogs that are still considered dogs, but they have different attributes. They're different breeds, they have different weights, but because we created that class, dog, we can define all of these as dogs. Once we've created the object or created the class, we then have to define what the class can do, or in this case, what dogs can do. Those are what are called methods. So a method is a procedure that is associated with a specific class. So a method, think of like all your action words, your verbs. They are things like walk, run, eat. A method defines a behavior of an object inside of a class. So for our example of dog, those things would apply. Methods associated with a dog, like we kind of have here, could be eat, walk, sit. Sometimes methods can take in inputs, such as you see the 2 different versions of play. One, it's not taking in an input, so it's just playing in general. The second one is taking in the input toy, so that would be an action of a dog playing with that specific toy, whatever that input is. They can take an input, but they don't have to take an input. It's helpful sometimes to take an input when you have something else to interact with. So once we have all those parts of our class, to simplify it and to make it something that we can show is the class diagram. So this is our planning document to describe a class. The class diagram has 3 main sections: your class name, your list of attributes, which those are your properties, those are the things that are about the class and about the object that aren't necessarily changing very easily. And then you have your methods, which again are your actions. So think of your attributes like properties, your methods like your actions. You don't define any of these in a class diagram. A class diagram is basically like an outline. We'll define them when we create the object. For now, this is just giving us the basic structure of our class. So for our example of dog, our class name is dog. Our attributes, things like name, breed, age, gender, and weight. There are obviously more than those, but those are the 5 I chose. Those are things that are properties about the dog. Every dog should have a name, a breed, an age, a gender, and a weight. Obviously, in some cases that can vary, but for our purposes, each dog has those 5 attributes. And you'll notice in the class diagram, each of those attributes, beside it is the type. So when we define the attributes, we want to make sure to define the type so that if someone else were to try to input all of these things, they had the correct type. So your name is a string because it's a word. Your breed would also be a string. Age is an int. Boolean for gender is kind of because you have the 2 genders for dogs, so your true could be one gender, false could be another. Weight we put as a string because keep in mind you have to have your pounds, kilograms, so you would put it in as a string. Then in our methods, I have 5 methods there: sit, eat, walk, run, and play. Notice you have your parentheses. Those are showing that it's not a variable. When you have the parentheses, that's what's showing it's a method. That's what's showing it's an action I can create. So I think that covers this one. Let's move on. When we have our class diagram done, we have this special function we have to create for the class called a constructor. So a constructor looks differently in each kind of language, so I'm not going to go into what it looks like necessarily in Python or Java, but the basic idea of a constructor, it's a special function that when it's used, when dog is called, defines the attributes for that dog. So think of our class dog. Remember, it's our blueprint. It's our basic dog function. Once I create the class, it has these blank attributes. So name, breed, age, gender, and weight. Once I input my constructor, so once I construct my dog, that's what a constructor does. It creates your object. It constructs your object. That is when I input all of that information. So once my constructor is called, that is when my dog class becomes Willie the Bernedoodle in this case. So you have your class. Remember, your class has all of these things in it. Class can be everything. Honestly, we are using the concept of dog because I wanted to look at cute pictures of dogs when I was putting this together. But a class can be anything. You can have a class of a person, a car, a building. Anything can be a class. Just keep in mind that your class should be your broad. Inside that, you have your more specific objects. So that is today's lesson. It's not a super long lesson, but it's good information. We'll work with this a little bit more once we get into some more programming later on. But for now, you have a small project. So this project is to create a class with at least 5 attributes and 5 methods. From that class, you're going to create a class diagram. So this can be done either on paper. If you do it on paper, take a picture of it and submit it to Teams. There'll be an assignment posted. Or I have a blank assignment with a blank class diagram in there in a Word document for you. So once you've created your class diagram, I want you to get a little creative and create 3 instances of that class with information filled out by the constructor. So what that means, and I have an example, is my project obviously would have been dog. I have my 5 of each, my 5 methods, my 5 attributes. Then I have 3 different instances of it. So your instances should include something like a picture. So if you are doing anything that you can find a picture of, find a random picture of that object. Then you have your 5 attributes. So for mine, remember it's name, breed, age, gender, and weight, filled in for each of those. Make sure it's school appropriate. Even if we're not in school, make sure it's school appropriate. But be a little creative. I'll give a bonus point to whoever has the most creative class and the most creative 3 people or 3 objects out of that class. Again, you can do this on paper. It's going to be easier to do it in the Word document. The assignment will be posted into Teams. there will be a Word document there. So I'll be hanging out for the last 15 minutes of the hour if you're actually doing this in time for class. If you're doing this at another time, my office hours are posted in Teams if you need any help with assignment or just want to kind of check to make sure you're on the right track. I will see you all soon.